Club. My name is Angela Greiling-Keene. I'm a reporter for Bloomberg News and the 106th president of the National Press Club. We are the world's leading professional organization for journalists, committed to our profession's future through our programming with events such as this, while fostering a free press worldwide. For more information about the National Press Club, please visit our website at www.press.org. To donate to programs offered to the public through our National Press Club Journalism Institute, please visit www.press.org/institute. On behalf of our members worldwide, I'd like to welcome our speaker and those of you in our audience today. Our head table includes guests of our speaker, as well as working journalists who are club members. And if you hear applause in our audience, I'd note that members of the general public are also attending, so it's not necessarily evidence of a lack of journalistic objectivity. I'd also like to welcome our C-SPAN and public radio audiences. You can follow the action on Twitter today using the hashtag NPCLunch. After our guest speech concludes, we'll have a question and answer period. I will ask as many questions as time permits. Now it's time to introduce our head table guests. I'd ask each of you to stand briefly as your name is announced. From your right, Phil Contrino, Vice President and Chief Analyst for BoxOffice.com and a new member of the National Press Club. Marquette Smith, Entertainment Reporter for Fox Richmond. Laurie Russo, Managing Director of Stanton Communications. Amy Henderson, Cultural Historian at the National Portrait Gallery. Kimberly A. Schoenert-Reichel, a professor in the Department of Education and Counseling Psychology and Special Education at the University of British Columbia. Skipping over the podium, Allison Fitzgerald, Finance and Investigative Reporter at the Center for Public Integrity and the Chairwoman of the National Press Club Speakers Committee. Skipping over our speaker for just a moment, Donna Leinwan-Leger, a reporter for USA Today, a past National Press Club president, and the Speakers Committee member who organized today's lunch. Thank you for that, Donna. Susan Heavey, reporter for Reuters. Kate Michael, editor of K Street Magazine. And Richard Simon, a reporter for the Los Angeles Times. This is the tale of a local girl made good. The story begins a few miles away from here in downtown Washington, where our guest today won the audience over with Bye Bye Birdie at Montgomery Blair High School in Silver Spring, Maryland. 4 decades later, Goldie Hawn is one of Hollywood's most burnished stars with an Oscar, a Golden Globe, and so many award nominations that if I listed them all, we would not have time to hear her speak. When she's not acting, hanging out with partner Kurt Russell, spending time with her kids, Oliver, Kate, Wyatt, and Boston, or gushing over her grandchildren, she's worrying about everybody else's kids. Alarmed after the September 11th terrorist attacks by rising suicide, depression, and dropout rates among young people, Hawn, who practices Buddhism, became interested in brain science. It inspired her to create the Hawn Foundation, which has designed a school curriculum, MindUP, incorporating mindfulness training to help keep kids focused, manage their emotions, and reduce stress and conflict in their lives. We were honored to have her here at the National Press Club in 2001 to talk about the beginnings of that effort. She's written 2 books, a memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, and 10 Mindful Minutes, giving our children and ourselves the social and emotional skills to reduce stress and anxiety for healthier, happier lives. A publisher's weekly review of the second book called Hawn's, quote, gentle, heartfelt approach to mothering and her mission to help children develop happier, healthier lives, useful and inspiring. Hawn, who was born in Washington, D.C., got her first break at age 22 on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, for which she was nominated twice for Emmy Awards. She showed flawless comedic timing, which nearly always guaranteed a laugh or applause from the audience. In fact, one of her most memorable lines might even get a laugh today. She said, "I don't see why there should be any question about capital punishment." She said this in 1969. "I think everyone in the Capitol should be punished." Since then, she's acted in more than 30 films, winning an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in Cactus Flower and icon status with Private Benjamin. Her roles have run the gamut from comedic as the jilted ex-wife with unnaturally bloated lips in First Wives Club to the thriller cult classic Foul Play. Then there's Shampoo, Overboard, Bird on a Wire, and the list goes on. You can even hear her voice now in Phineas and Ferb. Please join me in giving a warm National Press Club welcome to Goldie Hawn.
Thank you so much. I'm amazed that you found Phineas and Ferb. I did that for my grandchildren. Oh my goodness, it's great to be here. I'm so happy to be here again, and I have an honor actually to be here because I get to speak about something that's very, very close to my heart now. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I would like to welcome my beautiful family who is sitting over there, giving me support and love like they've always done. And also our wonderful group here, our CEO and so forth, and Mort, and all of you together who are now working on our high school curriculum and just beginning the process now. But what I'd like to do, first of all, I'm going to apologize. I don't have a script because I don't like to look down and read. I like to be able to talk to everyone. And sometimes I just might skip around. I don't know. But what I'd like to do first is I would like to introduce you, I guess say reintroduce you to me. I was born, probably about a mile away from here in Doctor's Hospital. And I was brought home to a duplex house on a dead-end street in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And that's where I lived for 19 years. I lived in half a house, which was a palace to me. And I had a beautiful father who was a musician who played every inaugural in Washington from Roosevelt on. He was a staple here and came back with some pretty fabulous stories at night. Because, you know, being a musician, you not only have a great sense of humor, but you also have a great eye for, I guess you could say, satire. My mother worked also. She was started a dancing school. We had our own little shop, and she ran a gift shop. So I had two working parents. But, you know, I was kind of a happy child. And I remember my first day of school, and I went to Silver Spring Intermediate School. And in that school, we had very challenged children in the basement. They had cerebral palsy. So we were integrated with these children. And on the first time that I'd gone to school, I noticed that we were having lunch with children who were, couldn't move well. And I made my best friend that day. His name was Barney. And he was someone who could hardly speak, who smiled all the time, and he became my friend all the way through to 6th grade. However, perfect. So, and at any rate, I then took 1st grade. Well, we had all our coloring to do, and I colored all the apples and the bananas and the, pears and grapes and everything we were supposed to color the color. But I colored them all yellow. And my teacher said to me, Goldie, why did you color everything yellow? I mean, you knew that a grape is purple, and you knew so forth. And I looked at her and I said, because I like yellow. That was the first inclination that I didn't follow directions all that well. Then we got into 2nd grade, and I wasn't bringing home a reading book. So my mother said, why aren't you bringing your reading book? I said, because I'm in the Purple Balls, Mom. And she said, well, that's great. The Purple Balls reading group? Yes, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I just think it's good because I'm the only one in it. So she went to school and she found out that it was the worst reading group. So as we went along, my mother realized, well, I wasn't really learning to read very well. So she helped teach me read. And then we realized at that point that I wasn't really retaining information too well. Now, that didn't stop me from exerting my personality. And even though I didn't finish my homework or my papers, I signed them all, Love Goldie. At which point, my mother decided that maybe she should check my IQ. I came out with flying colors, I just want to let you know. But it didn't help my reading, it didn't help my retention, and I think that it was probably an indicator that I was mildly dyslexic. So therefore, I had my challenges. And I had my challenges in school on many levels. One is that I was Jewish, and I got teased. We didn't call it bullying then, but I had resilience because I had parents that cared. And I knew that I was proud to be Jewish. But some kids just didn't look at it that way, but it didn't get to me. I was teased because in the later years I was flat-chested, and I was skinny. But that was okay, because my mother said, you just wait. Now, I went along in my school, and I was a very sensitive child. But I was building other things, other levels of resilience, other talents. No, I was not going to be a rocket scientist. I was not going to be some of those things that parents think their children are going to be, because my parents knew what I could do. I could dance. I enjoyed life. And they didn't want to be the one that would stop me from progressing, to feel good about myself, to do the things that I could do, and work at my strengths. Something happened in 6th grade. I went down to the visual aids room. The visual aids room was the most fun place to go. We're out of class. We go downstairs, and all of us are going, we think I'm going to watch our agricultural film. It's all set. Lights go out. We're sitting there waiting to learn about Iowa and farming. And we sat there, and on the screen comes a big black circle. 9, 8, 7, 6, until it hit 0, and then there was a huge crash. The atom bomb went off. And what I saw changed my life forever. They panned mothers and children crying. Perfect cue. We were looking at annihilation. We were looking at blood. We were looking at panic. And I started to shake. I was 11 years old, going on 12. I was so frightened that I couldn't stop shaking, because that was going to be me. I was going to die. I knew that the Russians were going to bomb us, and that we had no way, and that ducking under a desk and turning your head away from the light wasn't going to work. So I asked the teacher, I said, could I go home, please? She said, well, Goldie, you never go home for lunch. I said, I know, but my mom told me to. I walked to school every day. Of course, that's the way it was then. That's the way it was. That's when we used to lie on the grass and look up at the clouds and try to figure what they looked like. Or we would never lock our door because everyone was welcome and we were never afraid. Or we would sit on the stoop instead of burying ourselves into devices, and we would figure out, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, let's crack open rocks. Let's rake the leaves, let's jump in them. I was a good sleeper, life was good. It was all wonderful. I got called in from dinner, play till dark, until this happened. And I shook, and I ran home, and I called my mother at work. And I said, Mom, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. My brain had imprinted this horrible scenario, and it stayed there till I ended high school. I couldn't hear a siren without going into panic attacks. My mother came back to the house, and she called the Board of Education immediately and said, why are you showing children this? Why is it that you think that they can absorb this? They can't. It needs to be told differently. If you're going to duck and cover, do it differently. You've traumatized my daughter. She then explained to me why Russia really wasn't going to do it, because our leadership, because we had people talking, because the bomb would annihilate everybody and then everybody would die, and nobody wants everyone to die. Well, guess what? I had some cognitive theories about that because of my mother. So I was able to learn how to kind of understand, but it was a lasting fear and lasting panic attacks. Now, that was the time where we had conflict, a lot of it. Civil rights. We were out marching. We had people killing each other. We had assassinations of our great leaders, beloved leaders, one after the other. We had the Bay of Pigs. We lived through that. Imagine my fear in history class at 11 o'clock when we didn't know if we were going to be hit or not. But we didn't have the red and blue problems that we have today, because Eisenhower was talking to Kennedy. That was a purple situation. And he was really helpful, and he wanted the help and the guidance, and he got it. And the decision that was made was the right decision. So we got through it. We got through some of the hardest times where people had a voice. Kids got up and spoke. We had some tragedy inside of that, but we felt we could make a difference. That was what was great. Laughing. We thought we could make a difference just by opening up conversations, saying things, colleges, speaking out. We had an opinion. We had a point of view. We mattered. Now, we cut to today. Instead of watching 4 channels, 5 channels, 6 channels, we've got hundreds. We have news that is running by cable over and over again, reprocessing the same information. We are being imprinted with this information, and it's usually information grabbing eyeballs. It's got to be controversial. This is a different world that we're living in. And I was noticing this as time has gone on and looking at what was happening to the fiber of our communities, the fiber of our world. I mean, it didn't start with taking the bra off or creating liberation, because liberation is an internal feeling, not an external feeling. But when we began this time period, leading up to all these decades that I have lived through, where we actually felt we mattered, I don't know how much we think we matter today. And I don't know how much our children feel they matter today. It was 9/11, September 11th. I was getting my child off to school, and we saw our Twin Towers crumble. And we were in shock. This couldn't happen to us. We've gotten through so much. We won. We spoke out. We mattered. Now what's happening is that we are being taken as prisoners of fear, of terrorism, of hatred, of things that we can't wrap our hands around, our minds around, destabilizing us, creating uncertainty in our lives and our future. I sat there. We all gathered as a family. We went together and sat in our rooms together in our house. All the children came back home. I couldn't think of what to do. So I went upstairs and I got my knitting basket. And for a week, I cried, I watched television, and I knit the American flag. I didn't have a pattern. I just did it as I felt it, as we moved through that week and into the next. And while I knit this flag, I wept for our children, because I knew that they were going to inherit a world that would change forever. their little worlds were going to change forever, just as our world was changing forever. We had uncertainty. We didn't know what was going on. The difference is that when I was afraid, and I dealt with that fear, is that today, I don't know how to deal with this fear. And all I could think of was, what are our children going to do? What are they going to inherit? They are watching the news over and over again. These children's brains are being processed and processing this consistent falling. They don't know it's not happening 1,000 times. Is anyone looking at the development of our children's brains? Is anyone looking at that? So there was this sense of purpose that I had. My career is wonderful. The idea that I get to be up here today and talk about my movies is great. Yeah, I was in service doing that. I feel that I was in great service doing that. But something happened to me 12 years ago, and I asked myself, now what are you going to do, Goldie? Now what are you going to do? So I went to Vancouver. We sat in there, and I was there because my son wanted to play hockey, and by God, we were going to stand there for his dream. And I would sit quietly in my room, and I realized that all the studies I'd done on the brain, I'm fascinated with the brain. All the understanding of what contemplative practice can do, all the understanding of what social emotional learning can do, positive psychology. And I thought to myself, it just came to me, why aren't we teaching this in the classroom? By the way, the phrase social emotional learning, I had absolutely no idea what that was. All I knew is that our children needed help. They needed tools for this 21st century, and it wasn't going to be to learn math better. It wasn't going to be to learn to read better. It was going to be learning to cope in this world with the toolbox they need to have to move forward, to be socially responsible, to be empathetic, to clear their minds, to understand how to reduce stress, because our children experience stress, and we don't think they do. Oh, yeah. So I started looking into some statistics about where children are today, discovering that in 2007, we had 8 million children on psychotropic drugs. That was 2007. I couldn't get the stats today, but I can tell you it's a lot more. Now, I am not here to say that the drugs are bad. They have helped seriously impaired children and seriously impaired people with mental issues. But we have a mental health crisis in this country, the likes of which I've never seen. And we're asking now, in our education system, to succeed. We want to bring these little widgets inside of a classroom and make them get A's. And we want them to innovate. And we want them to create. And we want them to write. And we want them to change the world. How are we going to change the world when our children are in silent distress? Can you think when your brain is in frenzy? Can you make the right decisions when you're in panic? When you're in confusion and you don't understand? And what we're doing is we're imprinting these great goals on these children when in fact we're not really looking at the state of mind that our kids are in right now. If we have these children on drugs, by the way, these drugs continue to go. It's a $9 billion industry right now. In which case, has anyone ever asked, is there a longitudinal study done? Do we know the effects of these drugs on these children for a lifelong, a lifetime? Have we checked out the developing brain? Does it impair the developing brain? Does it mean that they might become addicted after 20 years? Are we going to create addicted society? And these are very dramatic things I'm saying, but I do ask the question. And I do know that through practice and understanding of how to work children's minds and deal with their brains, we can fix that. But we have to pay attention. It is time now to pay attention. So what I did is I created the Hawn Foundation in order to develop a program called MindUP. MindUP is a program that is basically was something I thought if I could change one child at this point in history, it would be a victory. And we created a small program that had 4 things in it. One is just a little bit about the brain. Another one, because I said, why don't our children know about the brain? Why aren't we teaching them the greatest tool that they have? We know enough. It shouldn't sit in the petri dishes of our universities. We should be able to put that into our classrooms. Our children need to know the amazing thing that they have, better than any computer, to be able to develop, to grow, to become good, strong, healthy-minded people. So what we did is we pulled together neuroscientists, we pulled together positive psychologists, we pulled together teachers, we pulled together contemplative practitioners. And I will say this had nothing to do with Buddhism. I'm Jewish. This has to do with calming the mind. This has to do with understanding that every brain needs a break, and every child needs a break. We've taken away recess. We've taken away sports. We have taken away, these children are so stressed in their classrooms. We demand so much from them. And this is from, we're dealing now with children of all balances and socioeconomic status. So anyway, we created this program called MindUP. I was there. Dr. Kim Schonert-Reichel is here, sitting here. She is our researcher from the University of British Columbia, and she did some research. She said, I'd like to research this. And we had buy-in from by the way, the school superintendent there, which was amazing, because top-down's the way to go. And she researched it. And she came back and she said, in 20 years, I've never seen research like this in my life. 12 weeks, these children became 83% more optimistic, and we all know that an optimistic child learns better. A happy child is a better learner. A child who has hope is a better chance of learning and retaining information. A frenzied mind cannot. So if we think we're going to teach our children like this, we're not going to unless we relax their mind and we give them a sense of safety and nurturing. Then we found out that aggression went down on the playground by 25 or more %. We weren't talking about bullying. We were just talking about how do we get peace? How do we get together in the classroom? How do we wrap this around our math and our English and curriculum, which we've done. We then discovered that we did a cortisol test. I don't know that there's ever been one done. I don't think so. We did spit into a little thing, and all the kids loved it. Every hour they would spit into the thing. And we sent it to Germany. It came back, and our children were more able to manage their stress hormone cortisol than the children in the control group. What does that say for healthcare? What does that say for their ability to move through life in a healthy manner? They're managing their stress. Think about that. How about these kids are now going home and saying, Mom, relax. Take a breath. It's just traffic. So we've taught children, and I created a disturbance because people looked and said, oh, this will never go. You're never going to be able to take 3 brain breaks a day in the classroom. Well, as it turned out, this is a program that has worked. This is a program that has worked. And we're now in 6 countries. I never believed it to be. It is the most important thing in my life to see that one day that we adopt these principles in every classroom in America. Because if we don't give our children the chance, we're going to be in trouble. Because they can't face this new world we're living in without these tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have, of course, a lot of questions on a lot of topics. How can you succeed in promoting self-reflection and meditation when every kid seems permanently attached to his or her iPhone or whatever else, other device it may be of the moment? Do you have any recommendations for dealing with the constant electronics with all the issues you're talking about?
I'm writing a book now, actually, 10 Mindful Minutes for Joy and Happiness and Rediscovering That in Your Life. And what we're doing is talking about the internet and obviously these devices and so forth. And actually, the thing was called Disconnect, the chapter. What we're learning is about the internet is that it isn't all bad. It is rewiring the brain in certain ways that is actually very, very important. I mean, not since the invention of the tools have we grown so much in terms of brain neurological activity. However, what we're missing there is the social and emotional aspect of it. So what's happening is we're losing our connection to each other. What happens when you quiet the mind? And that's what we call it. We do not call it meditation in the classroom. You can leave that for outside and do anything you want with that. But when you quiet the mind, we do it 3 times a day for 2 minutes. What the children learn is that it quiets down the limbic system. And the limbic system has, different areas in it, but we like to talk to the amygdala when they're little because they understand it. And that is a very reactive, basic substance and part of the brain. When you breathe and you focus and you sit there for a while and get calm, so we used to put our heads on our desk. Well, we don't do that anymore. But it's similar to allowing yourself to relax and be calm. They learn that it changes the prefrontal cortex and lights it up. So they know that when they quiet the amygdala, which we call the bulldog barking, when you get him back in the doghouse, they know what happens neurologically. So it isn't woo-woo, it's all science, it's all about how we understand how we can manage our brain. So they know when that lights up, when that wise old owl prefrontal cortex lights up, they can think, they can make decisions, they can analyze, they can learn, and they can remember.
Mindfulness training is taking off at a number of schools across the country. You talked about why we need that. What can educators take away from these approaches as they aim to steer not only the overachieving students, the ones you talked about, but also those who may have stresses in their personal lives outside of school?
That's a very, very good question. I've been asked a lot. They ask if this is a program that's guided, toward inner city, at-risk kids, or and that's sort of what people think when you're out helping children. The reality is, and the research that's been done on this, is that our children of affluence are just as much at risk. In fact, the affluent children are the ones who take their lives. The affluent children are the ones who self-medicate. The affluent children are the ones that have, anxiety disorders oftentimes and depression. So these are these things that we look at and we say, well, this is an aspect of how we learn to manage whatever our fears are, because it's all done by uncertainty and fear, and these are very human issues. This doesn't have anything to do necessarily with where you are and what station in life you are. So it helps everyone across the board, including our teachers.
A member of our audience who's a practicing child psychologist says, where do you start with the program in elementary schools, and how do you persuade school districts to get on board?
Well, the proof is basically in the pudding. And when you show the results and you get the kind of activity that you are getting, I think that what's happening is that it's becoming, instead of a push, it's becoming a pull. And the reason it's becoming a pull is because we're kind of throwing our hands up and going, what can we do? So when you get into a school district that is ripe and ready, and you say to them that we can help manage your children, we can actually help them become more self-managed themselves. We can reduce bullying, not by talking about bullying, but by creating a community in the classroom, teaching about empathy, understanding optimism versus pessimism, and doing acts of kindness. These kind of things which sound very, very crazy, it's like out there, it's like preschool. Do you know that the research of just gratitude itself, and this is a research study that was done, has pulled people out of depressed states, out of beds. This is a simple way of doing it. Why? Because the brain starts to relearn different things. What is it? You fire together. So the brain loves habituation. So when you habituate a positive experience, such as gratitude, it starts to change how you fire. It starts to change how your brain thinks. It just likes it. Brains like to do habituation things. Sometimes it's not so good, and sometimes it is. So that's what we do with our children. Oh, thanks. I'm running on here.
Students today take more high-stakes tests than ever and at increasingly younger ages. Is this concerning, and if so, what should be done about it?
You know, I think that testing is actually an interesting thing. I mean, we all go about it in different ways. We all think it's, you know, some of it's very important and others isn't. You know, testing, you know, is up for grabs. I mean, you know, does it matter if, you know, I get a high grade on a test? Can I actually talk to people? Can I actually, you know, what we found is that an emotional IQ actually is an indicator of a much more successful life and life experience than a very, very high IQ where, you know, we could have rocket scientists out there, but they, you know, don't necessarily live, you know, an integrated life. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, there are problems with testing. But I will say this, it's just like the internet, it's the web, it's progress, it's where we are. I don't think testing is going to end. It's not going to stop, and neither is that. So the question is, how do we move around it? That's what we teach our children. It's here forever. Let's make some choices. So the choices are, have we learned how to reduce stress during tests? Have we actually been able to use our MindUP techniques so we know tools to do? I'm going to reach in my toolbox. I'm going to figure out how to get around this fear. How am I going to get around feeling I'm not smart enough? That's the way we do it. And we just have to keep creating more tools to exist.
An article in Scientific American described you as having said children are profoundly unhappy. What led to that observation, and in what way are they unhappy?
Well, first of all, that's a written word, and we don't always go by that. I don't think I said they were profoundly unhappy. What I do think is that children deserve to be happy, and that they have every right to be happy. And I think that it is our job as the grown-ups, as the guiding lights to people to nurture what is one day going to be 100% of our population into the best state of mind they can be, and to create some level and reservoir of joy in their lives to always dip into and know that it's theirs alone.
Questioner asks if you found challenges introducing the program in schools in any particular regions. This person says, have you encountered difficulty in more conservative areas?
Oh, believe it or not, we haven't had too many complaints about that, which I think is pretty amazing. We are a science-based program, basically. So if we're teaching kids about the brain, you know, we're going to learn about all kinds of things, and our children learn with the brain itself, know what their emotions are doing to the brain and what the brain is reacting. So it's a conversation that we have between the brain and our exterior life. In terms of getting, so I really haven't, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Has any of your research linked the increasing violence in schools with the stresses and fears that young people are feeling these days?
Say that again.
Have you seen any scientific link between violence in schools and stress among children?
There's definitely a scientific link. It's where you have to rise up and ask the question, what are we doing? What are we doing wrong? What's happening? Our kids are very, very stressed. And fear actually creates anger. You know, when you're afraid of something, you say, oh, I'm just so afraid. Well, eventually, if that fear isn't resolved, it's going to turn to anger, no question. I think our children are, you know, acting out. I also think, oddly enough, that, you know, a lot of the school shootings and the things that we've been going through today, which is just harrowing. I can't turn on the news anymore. I can't see this level of fear and frustration and ugliness and illness, mental illness that seems to be rampant now. And these people are on the loose, and of course guns are relatively easy to get. I don't want to get into that part. You know, it's highly controversial. I think just our goodness of our hearts should really be able to make those decisions, and hopefully the people in our good world that are the leaders and the thought leaders will be able to take charge for us. But on the other hand, as far as these children are concerned, we are seeing a lot of scientific problems. And one of them is that when they go off their medication, there is potential psychoses. We've seen it. We understand it. So what's interesting here is are some of these children troubled? Have they gone off their meds? Or are these the wrong meds? Or are they getting too many meds? You know, this is where it gets scary. So, you know, yes, I think there's scientific reasons.
Have you approached federal officials about participating with your program, and is that part of this visit to D.C.?
No, it is not part of my visit to D.C. My home and my government, that I believe so wholeheartedly that needs to serve us in the right way. I think that there will be a time where, we will move forward with, being, speaking more about this. I have an opportunity today to speak to some people who are change makers who actually can, understand the dilemma. Our education system needs to change, and I think that there are ways and means to create the good argument and prove premises and understanding that the private sector is really, we can't depend on the private sector. There are millions of dollars going out, millions, that are helping and understand the problem to try to get more mental health in the schools, more health care in the schools, on and on and on in terms of, mindfulness programs and, understanding all of that. But it's not going to make it. We can't, scaling is very, very difficult. So my plea here, I suppose, would be, continues to be, how do we scale this on our own? We need help from the top down of the government. This is not being dependent upon the government. We are all, chance takers. We're disturbance makers. We create the disturbance. And I think that's the only way to grow. So I would like to say, yes, I am here to speak about this, to top down really have the conversation, and hopefully someone will be listening.
Given the success of the Sundance Channel's Dream School series, which highlights celebrities trying to help troubled youth, have you considered combining your acting and your work with this initiative on television?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. I've had my head down for 11 years. I mean, literally, boots on the ground, head down, looking at research, understanding the value of what we're doing, paving roads. We're now in 6 countries, by the way, and this has all been a pull, not a push. So we're not the only country. We are basically the only country in certain areas. For instance, we are giving more psychotropic drugs to children than any other country in America. We're also, probably our children are living at 50% of our children in the South are living below or at the poverty level. How can a child go to school, think, and so forth when they only have 1 meal a day? We've got some serious challenges here. So in terms of bringing what I do, head down, my head's just come up, which means now what we're doing is creating animation. Animation in terms of apps, but animation in terms of helping children understand how their brains work. So we're creating real animation to teach them, understanding these social emotional skills, how we wrap this around our education, how we apply it to the various things that we're doing in school. So we are doing that. Is there a channel to be doing this? Absolutely. I have gone to different channels earlier, but I wasn't ready yet. Sometimes it takes time to incubate a program to make it fly. Our program is flying, so now it's time to actually work that way. I thought I had 2 hats. I thought I was doing the foundation work, and I thought, gee, I haven't brought in some of the things that I do. So that's what we're doing now.
A questioner asked, does the MindUP curriculum work well for children who have atypical brains, in other words, children on the autism spectrum or with ADHD?
We have actually had this in our challenge babies who are problematic in these areas for sure. I've heard wonderful feedback. We've done no quantitative research on that, right, Kim? But we literally have worked with them. I have one story. It was a little boy who had autism. He was in the classroom with the other children, and he was very nervous. He was going to take a test, and he started becoming symptomatic. And he started shaking his hands, and he just couldn't stop shaking his hands and couldn't stop reacting in this fashion. And one of the little boys said, "Could we sit in a circle and do our mind, just our brain break because I think he needs it because he's having, the children were very, very empathetic." And she said, of course. When we sat down, they did their breathing, they did their focusing. The child stopped shaking his hands, and he was able to take his test. So everybody felt good in the classroom. They all supported him, and the prescriptive worked.
Tell us a little bit more about where MindUP is in practice, and for those of us whose schools do not have it, where can people find out more information?
Well, first of all, you can find out on our website. It's the HawnFoundation.org. It's the MindUP program, and we're ready and willing to do it. So, I mean, it's just exciting to get the calls, exciting to go out and train. We have trainers that are, ready to go. We also have a website that's coming out, which is an e-learning portal. So that also will be another way to be able to get this. What was the other question? Was there another part of it?
Where is it?
Oh, we are in, 15 different states here, probably more. I tell you the truth, I haven't looked. It keeps growing. We've got Canada. We've got hundreds of thousands of children doing this program around the world now. It's not enough.
We obviously could fill the whole hour with talk about the foundation, but as you can imagine, there's some questions on other topics as well. We will start with one from a 10-year-old in the audience who wants to know, what character do you play in Phineas and Ferb?
Oh my gosh, that is so fun. Did I have a snuggle with you? Yeah, I did. The grandmother. She was the one that sat in the window. I don't know if I'm going to do a repeat on Phineas and Ferb, but she kind of talked like that. And she was a sweet old lady, but she really was a nasty woman.
Questioner asks, I know you must have a favorite movie, or is it like children where you can't choose a favorite? Do you have a favorite movie experience, and if so, which one?
Wow, I have so many wonderful experiences making movies. Very hard to choose one. But just to satisfy that, I think that I've had a lot of great experiences. And Kurt, obviously, it was fabulous to work with. I'd worked with him twice. Doing Overboard was just a dream. We had our children on the set. We had a new baby. He was 8 months old. That was Wyatt. So it was a dream to make that movie. It really, really was. In terms of, just in the other part is that I think Sugarland Express was one of my most exciting movies that I've ever done. It was really with Steven Spielberg. It was his first film. And I was playing a different kind of character. I mean, obviously being a funny person is great, and I loved it. And it's really, I get it, God put me here for a reason. I always say, okay. But sometimes you get to do something different. And I did. And she was not a comedic character. She was a very tragic character. And she was entertaining, but it was a serious movie. So that was fun.
When might we see you and Kurt on the screen together again?
Probably not. I'll tell you why. Because unless it was some really interesting thing and there was a small role or there's no, that's actually probably not. I mean, who knows? But when people have been together for so long, and we've been together 30 years, there's a love for those people, but there's no mystique about them anymore. And so I guess if I was going to do a role, it would be more interesting and more exciting to see me with, I don't know, another guy. And he, another girl.
If you had to pick the other guy, who would you pick?
A few guys ran through my head, but I didn't say it.
Hollywood is clearly focusing on creating more strong leading roles for women. Do you think that progress is happening fast enough, or is there still room for improvement?
That's a loaded question. Hollywood, women. I think women have actually come up quite a bit in Hollywood. I think they're, running studios and doing all kinds of things, whatever. The women's roles, yes. Are women getting stronger? Absolutely. They're playing action roles. They're sometimes swapping and taking the men's roles. These are the tough women with the boots and the guns and whatever. They look pretty sexy while they're doing it. But I think that there is, in some way, still a level of, I'm not going to call it a glass ceiling. We're in an area of entertainment. People like to see young people kissing on screen. It's really a young man's business. And so if a woman is of a certain age, she really, it's very difficult. If a man is of a certain age, it's not as difficult at all. But it is, in terms of women moving forward. I think women have done pretty well, and there are more women directors, but, you know, they come and go, you know. It's still a very male-oriented business. It's mostly they make movies for boys. They do, that's where the money comes in. A lot of the movies for women are still looked at and tempered. I know for private, what was it, First Wives Club, we all took a cut in salary. They didn't think that a movie with 3 women of a certain age was actually going to do anything. We got a nice backhand on it, which was good. But, you know, that's a little degrading. And then when we went to make the second one, there was some, you know, challenges about actually getting a raise, whereas I think if it had been 3 men, we would have gotten a substantial raise to do a sequel. So there are some, you know, challenges.
Your daughter, of course, being one of them. What advice do you have to younger women in Hollywood today?
MindUP. MindUp. Okay. I'll say this about myself rather than giving advice, and I don't give advice to Kate. She's strong and smart, and that's how I raised her, and my job is done. But for children, I mean for young girls, I really had a backup job. I was going to come home right here, that was my plan, and I was going to open a dancing school because I had a trade. I was a dancer. It's who I was, it's who I still am. And that's how I define myself in terms of what I do, not of course of who I am, but of what I do. So my idea was I had a backup. Always have a backup plan. You know, you're waiting for people to look at you and go, oh, you're fabulous. It's such a narcissistic place to be. Why do you depend on people to love you so much if you don't love yourself? So that's where I come from. Get a backup system. Figure out what else you're gonna do in life, because you never know. It's the same thing with a career that goes on and on and on, and one day that career stops. Who are you now? What do you care about? What are you gonna do in your life? What matters? I think those are the things that we need to ask ourselves early in life. So these things that don't work out sometimes, it's okay.
We have a bunch of questions about laughing. Did you ever ask
Rowan? This is longer than my speech. And that was longer than I expected.
Did you ever ask Rowan and Martin if you could come back and play a serious, focused character instead of a kooky blonde?
No.
Is there one movie line or line on Laugh-In that you wish you'd never uttered?
You must be joking. Do you know how many years ago that is? I have a funny story, and that is that I was on a, they called it the, what was it? It was the trap door. And I was to stand on this trap door, and the line was, funny, he didn't look Jewish. That was the line. And I didn't want to say it because I was scared. Because I was scared to go down into the trap door, because what they do is that they eliminate the square, and you got to do this. So Judy Carn said to me, oh, Goldie, darling, don't be scared. Don't be scared. It's going to be fine. Just put your hands down and pretend you're stoned. And, you know, that was not my thing. That was her thing. I thought, pretend I'm stoned? What does that do? Oh, my God, it was horrible. And I went, funny, he doesn't look Jewish. And George tricked me, and he didn't pull the trap door. And I didn't know if the trap door was stuck, and I couldn't get off of it, because if I did this, my leg would go up here. Anyway, he was tricking me. I slowly got off there. So when you ask about a line, that's probably the one I remember the most.
A questioner would like to know if you still dance.
I do dance. I dance in my workout room. I dance with my daughter in her workout area. But it was funny. I do a lot of exercise, so I cross-train. But dance, I said to Katie yesterday, I said, all right, this is ridiculous. I've got to start dance class again. So I'm going to start when I go back. And, I'm going to start training again because there's nothing like the joy that you get from moving to music. I mean, not for me. And in the days when I was completely strong and centered, it was unbelievable. But now I'm not so strong. One of the times after my baby was born, that was Katie, that second one, I went back to class. And my center of gravity was so off. I mean, I just had the baby, and I was literally having difficulty keeping my balance. I ran out of there weeping. I can't dance anymore. And I think that after a while, when you're a professional dancer, you stayed away for so long, you think, oh, my turnout is terrible. Oh, I'm not able to do this. So you judge yourself on different areas. But I am going back to dance class.
Excellent. We'll invite you back to a different forum to demonstrate that.
Oh, good.
We are indeed almost out of time, but before asking one last question, got just a couple housekeeping matters to take care of. First of all, I'd like to remind you about our upcoming speakers. On November 7th, this Thursday, we have Senator Judd Gregg of New Hampshire, former senator, who is now the CEO of the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. He will unveil a new investor bill of rights. On November 11th, we have Walt Bettinger, the president and CEO of the Charles Schwab Corporation, who will discuss 401k plans. When will we put hardworking Americans first? And on November 18th, we have Gloria Steinem, the feminist activist and founder of Ms. Magazine, and I bet she will use the words glass ceiling.
Oh, yeah, she probably will.
Secondly, I would like to present our guest with the traditional National Press Club coffee mug. Now you have a pair.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I do have this.
Excellent.
That's
Good.
so great.
And
Am I done?
One last question.
Yep.
Almost. A questioner wants to know, when you bet your sweet Bippy, exactly on what are you betting?
Well, unfortunately, I just do what I'm told. So I just basically did my lines. But I'll tell you what I am betting. I bet that in 20 years, every classroom in America will be teaching how the brain works to children.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. I'd also like to thank National Press Club staff, including our Journalism Institute and Broadcast Center, for helping organize today's event. Finally, here's a reminder that you can find more information about the National Press Club on our website, and if you'd like a copy of today's program, you can find it there as well at www.press.org. Thank you. We are adjourned.